pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, it looks like we're going to do the swearing-in ceremony for Councilmember-elect Olmscheid.
All right.
Becky, please stand.
Yes.
Raise your right hand and recite the oath in front of you.
I, Becky Olmscheid, do hereby solemnly swear that I support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota, and that I will faithfully, justly, and impartially discharge the duties of council member for the City of Becker, County of Sherburne, State of Minnesota, to the best of my knowledge and ability, so help me God.
All right. Congratulations, thank you. Next up, we're looking at the minutes from January 7th, 2025 regular council meeting. Is there any changes, or would anybody like to make a motion to approve those minutes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
We have a motion by Robin, do we have a second? Second. Second by Rick, is there any discussion? If not, all in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, state no. That motion carries, minutes are approved. Looking at tonight's agenda, is there any changes? We did note that Mr. Kua is filling in for Mr. Scharfenkamp for the two items at Pebble Creek. Any other changes? If not, we would entertain a motion to approve this agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Motion by Rick, do we have a second?
A second.
Give it to Mike, it was pretty close to a tie. Motion by Rick, seconded by Mike. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed state no. That motion carries. Guests in open forum, is there anyone here to speak to the council tonight? All right, then we will move on to committee reports. EDA?
EDA met Monday, January 13th. We elected our EDA officials and we approved some minutes that were held back because we needed a full quorum. We talked about the feasibility study update that is on the agenda tonight, and we heard a monthly market update. Currently 13 homes in the 55308 zip code for sale. Low inventory as it has been for quite a while now.
All right, thank you, Robin. Golf committee?
Golf committee, we met last Tuesday, the 14th. We went through some financials, and it was kind of different this time. Instead of just doing the year previous, we kind of did a 5-year comparison. And it was kind of intriguing to see that in the 5 years, the daily fee revenue tripled. And then in the last 5 years, the season passes doubled. So that was kind of a good number to see. The simulator play is doing great. It has 28 teams right now signed up. And I don't know if you guys have been out there and just kind of seen a little bit of construction. They're making a booth for the Lions of Becker are coming in to do the pull tabs. So which then opens up us being able to do some fun things like meat raffles, bingo, that kind of thing. So possibly launching all that in February is the predicted time slot for that. So yeah, so just kind of, I would say mostly look at social media. They'll probably put that out there. And there'll be more events.
Is that something the Lions would staff themselves? They would staff it?
Yes, they staff it, yep. So they do the hiring, yep.
Yes, they not only staff it, but they're paying us the same amount as if they didn't.
And yes, just a reminder, they also have been serving breakfast on the weekends, which has been going really well. I finally made it over there and had myself, you know, it's always better when someone else makes it breakfast. So yeah, I would suggest definitely getting over for that. So that's about all I got for you guys.
Awesome, congratulations, golf course people, those numbers are fantastic, thank you. Fire Relief Association, Mr. Ebensteiner.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Fire Relief had our quarterly meeting last Wednesday, the 15th at 7 p.m. Discussed fourth quarter financials. They talked about the calendars that went out and some of the success they had with that with some donations. They did discuss at the annual meeting, which is tomorrow night at 7. They discussed bringing up the discussion about benefit levels, just on where they're being funded. They're a little over 100%, so they're going to talk about possibly voting on increasing those. And then they're also going to talk about the para statewide plan and the conversation about possibly moving over to that in the future. So it was a good meeting.
All right, thank you very much. PD City Hall project update, Mr. LaRude.
More of the same as I reported at the last council meeting. I think almost all the interior walls are up. They are pulling wire and finishing rough in for mechanical and electrical. I would expect sheet rocking to start within a week or so, and they'll be working on the clear story over the entrance, getting that glass enclosed. Right now, it's kind of open to the elements, and so that's really the last piece to enclose. So we're moving along.
Okay, great. Any questions about that? Fantastic. We'll move on to the board, committee, and consultant reports. Pebble Creek Cart Path Improvement Plan, Mr. Kuha.
Mayor Kolbinger, members of council, thanks for the opportunity tonight. I'm stepping in for our golf course superintendent, Jason Scharfenkamp. He was at Greenskeepers conference today and wasn't able to get back quite in time, so I gladly step in for him. So forgive me if I don't have quite the technical expertise, but I'm enough to be dangerous. So feel free to ask any questions as we work our way through these next two RCAs. So the first one tonight is the Cart Path Improvement Plan at Pebble Creek Golf Club. For our members of council that were with us last year, we had started a 4-phase approach to redo the cart paths throughout the property. We went out with we had budgeted $100,000 for 2024, 25, 26, and finishing up on the local 9 in 2027. So we went out with that budget to different asphalt companies, looking to get the most linear feet within that budget. Last year, we went with Hanson Paving, which was approximately 6,600 linear feet of cart path replacement. The product turned out really, really great. It's 8.5 feet wide, 2 inches deep. It was a good working experience. So as we went into 2025 and engaging companies again for phase 2, which is indicated on the maps with the different colored goals of path work to be completed in each. So we're on to the 2025 phase, which is the green. So what we got, 6,600 linear feet last year within that budget. Hanson came in at 6,500 linear feet, so very similar pricing. As we kind of expected, as we reached out to Aurora Asphalt and Erickson Asphalt, they both communicated either verbally or in an email in your packet that they were not interested in bidding for the projects at this time. So they obviously going through the process last year, they're well aware that their quotes did not kind of equal out to what Hanson had quoted out. So I'm guessing that they were not really interested in bidding, knowing that they probably weren't going to be able to beat their pricing. And of course, we had a really good experience with Hanson, so that is who we are presenting and recommending to get phase 2 for this year. We've spoke about this with golf committee at multiple meetings, and golf committee is in support of advancing the conversation here for council consideration. Be happy to answer any questions about the project or the history of it. All the path work that we are replacing is original to the property, so excess of 35 years. We've gotten a lot of good use out of it. We've kind of prioritized the highest need areas, but also in a way that we're reaching kind of the far corners of the course and then paving our way back to the entry, so that not to drive all this heavy equipment over new cart paths throughout these phases. We are not necessarily doing like for like. Jason has really put a lot of planning and thought into the path work. So originally the property was very well pathed, sometimes redundancies on certain holes. So we're taking a fresh approach and not just repaving everything that was existing. We're actually eliminating a lot of path work just to be responsible to the budget and the spend. So we feel like we've got a really good plan of attack to restore those. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding the project. At the end, hopefully looking for a motion and a second to adopt cart path improvement plan and execute the 2025 portion.
All right, council have any questions? Would anybody like to offer a motion?
Make a motion to adopt the cart path improvement plan and execute the 2025 portion of it.
Motion by Robin, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mike, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, state no. That motion carries. Thank you. And it looks like you're up again for the Toro support renewal.
Thank you very much. So the next RCA you have is also a 2025 capital improvement project that we've been planning on. As irrigation and our courses age, large-scale irrigation replacements are very, very expensive, into the millions of dollars, and not something that we would ever take on in a one fell swoop, so to speak. So we've kind of selectively budgeted in our capital plan $25,000 each year to take on portions of it. Last year's portion was upgrading our irrigation control system. So in past practice, they'd have a physical map with all the zones, so they'd have to radio in to call water to certain areas, but we wouldn't have the ability to know the next day if the water was actually delivered in the fashion that we designed it to, which would show itself in dry areas, dead grass, things like that, that once you identified it, it was a little bit too late. So last year we had made investments into upgrading that control system. So it's app-based, it's GPS-based. It's a really, Jason would be the first to tell you, it's made the quality of our irrigation experience as well as the usefulness for the user a much higher level. So it's doing all the things that we hoped it would do. What we have in front of us tonight is last year when we did that upgrade, it came with 1 year of support. That year is terminated in January. So we're looking for a 5-year contract, or not contract, but 5-year support purchase. That is detailed in the attachment to kind of show what the options are. I do want to note, as we are very cautious with integrating any software into the city's network, that Jason did involve Rob, our IT specialist, to make sure he's comfortable with the support contract, the way it interfaces into our network. So that's all kind of been discussed on that level, because that is something we take very seriously as well. But with that said, they get 25 or 24/7 support. We've actually, having it last year, we had a faulty fan in our first computer that we received. A replacement was set the next day with no hassle. So we've had a chance to really call on this support package, and it's worked very well. So we are looking at the time that Jason had gotten the bid for this support extension, it was under $10,000. So we had earmarked, instead of 25 in our capital irrigation CIP, we brought it down to 10,000. Of course, by the time we got here, the price had increased. So you'll see the total dollar amount has exceeded slightly. To $12,290.63. So we had talked with golf committee, and what we are looking to do is our capital reserves are fairly healthy for the golf course. So instead of absorbing that 2,000 out of operations, that we would take that full spend out of the CIP, should that be the direction that you provide. If not, otherwise we would just pay for that overage through our operations irrigation budget, which would be fine as well. So it's very technical in nature as these things are, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. I can speak relatively intelligently on the subject. And after that, looking for a motion and a second to allow staff to renew the Toro NSN service support.
I'd just like to add that we were aware of this a year ago already. I mean, we knew we were gonna be doing this. So this is nothing that's surprising any. The only thing that was surprising is the price went up.
Which is not surprising.
Right, which is not surprising, but.
It does cover a 60-month period, so it's for the next 5 years.
Sure.
And it's 12,000 total, not 12,000 per year, right?
Correct, total.
So would golf committee recommend that comes out of the CIP then?
Yes.
Yep. Any other questions? If not, would someone like to offer a motion?
I'll motion to allow staff to renew their Toro NSN service support.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Becky, seconded by Mike. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, state no. That motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Sanders, we're on to the Business Incubator Feasibility Study.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I'll introduce this. I'll let Northspan do the presentation, and then at the end, I'll wrap up and talk a little bit about what EDA discussed at last week's meeting. So, in April of this year, the city issued an RFP for a feasibility study. This was part of the Just Transition Foundation grant. And that grant included $150,000 to do these cohorts through ILT Academy, and then another $100,000 for technical assistance, of which is being used to fund this feasibility study. An incubator is really something that would allow startups or other individuals who don't have the means or space to start a business and need a conference room or warehousing facilities or workspace or manufacturing, those types of things. That's what an incubator is, so that the public understands what this study was doing. And the study really looked at, is something like this feasible in the city of Becker? And it took a pretty quick time, or it took not very long. It went pretty quickly over several phases, which included a number of outreach, and I'll let the Northspan individuals touch base on that. EDA did have a few questions, and those are detailed in the report that's in the packet as well. They had a presentation to them at the December 9th EDA meeting, pretty robust one from Northspan as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Northspan, and then I'll wrap up at the end.
All right.
All right, thank you, Jacob. Thank you, Council. My name is Carl Shetler, the Vice President at Northspan. We had an opportunity, along with a couple of my teammates who are here today, to work on this project over the past several months. So really a great experience. And just a little bit about Northspan. We're an economic development focused consulting firm based in Duluth. So happy to be down here in the tropics where it's above zero. But we've had a lot of experience working in around different incubator spaces around the state. And so this was a great opportunity for us to interesting project to dive in and get to know Becker really well. So process, as Jacob was alluding to, had four major pieces to it. There was a background research phase. We did some community engagement. We did a financial feasibility part, which you'll hear about in a bit, and then drafted up some operations plans for a potential facility. So in the background and research and engagement phase, we first, we looked at a lot of the planning documents that just exist in this area, sort of seeing that there is a case for an incubator, something that grant applications will want to see, so just showing that relationship was in place was important. Did some background research on demographics and the economics of Becker, Sherburne County, the surrounding area, just sort of seeing that this is a growing area with a lot of good human capital, people with skills who are in the area, but a relative lack of business infrastructure, so some potential opportunity here. Have a strong economic base, strong manufacturing, construction, utilities, transportation sectors, which tend to have good skill sets that would lend themselves well to incubation, so another good box to check there. And we also spent some time just reviewing other incubators across the state and beyond, seeing some of the models that they used, what had made them successful, and had some conversations with some of them just on recommendations on practices. So a lot of good background work there. We also then looked at properties, looking for a potential location for an incubator facility in Becker. They looked at a series of possible existing buildings or vacant sites. The most viable building ended up going to auction in the middle of the process, so we ended up really just focusing on sites. And through some conversations with the city, we landed on this site as our preferred site. It's one right in the corner of Highway 10 and Liberty Drive, so we're right going into the industrial park there. So great visibility, great access to the industrial park, good connections happening there, plenty of space, and we thought it would be a good fit if city owned. So no worries there either. So the community engagement phase, we did a few different pieces here. We did a survey that got 83 responses, which for a somewhat specific ask on that survey we thought was a very good sample. Did a couple of focus groups with community members, people who had some interest in the idea. Then went deeper with 14 people as well, people who really had a deeper stake in the concept and had some vision of what it could look like. Also did a roundtable with some potential funders, partners, people who would potentially be partners in the creation of an incubator. So a lot of great feedback that came out of that process. So quite a few comments suggesting that this would meet some local demand that exists, potentially draw in some skilled workers or skilled users of that facility, potential for helping local incomes, valuable services to entrepreneurs. That was really a point that people hit again and again, is having those resources available and in one place. Certainly came out, possibility for mentorship, empowering those entrepreneurs, giving them supports they need to succeed, because it's not easy, and just creating a positive cycle there. So through some of the discussions we had, we came up with this concept, and the advice that we had for some of the other incubators was keep it broad, keep it simple, don't try to pigeonhole yourself into one specific thing. So we have a few very broad sectors that we listed on here that we thought interacted very well with the economic base that already exists here, and some of the skill sets that are around. So renewable energy and clean technology, certainly part of this energy transition that's going on, advanced manufacturing, robotics, technology and software, some good conversations with the school district, with St. Cloud Technical College about some potential connections there, and logistics and supply chain was another big piece that came up again and again. And just a whole lot of partners who are certainly engaged in the project. No one was necessarily willing to commit funding up front, but a lot of people who are at least tapped in, think it's a great idea, and are willing to help it along, at least in different ways. So, list of all of them here. I will invite my colleague Zach Filipovich up to talk a little bit about the financial side.
Thank you, Carl. Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thank you for the time. I'm going to go through the financial feasibility study part of the project to help us kind of conceptualize the building or whatnot. We actually put together a very rough, basic building concept for you, about 8,800 square feet. We designed it to be kind of modular, and we use this as a base to kind of base our construction costs off of. Based on what we saw on construction costs that are adjusted for our area, and the potential rents or potential revenue that the building could receive, this is probably about the smallest you could do. We could see it going bigger if the demand was there, just adding on to more work bays or more classroom space if that's desired. The increase there would be marginal, but the revenue piece would be adding pretty much 25% per work bay. I do want to point out that the industrial area up there, the main source of revenue that you'll see on the next slide, is built to a higher standard. For example, thicker, more reinforced concrete and that sort of thing, to be able to hold larger pieces of equipment if that is what is desired in that space. The investment and financing piece, the construction costs are more detailed in the report. This does include a contingency factor for that $3.3 million, and the other and equipment costs include $1 million for equipment, yet to be decided. You will see that grants and equity investment or possible donations make up the vast majority of the financing aspect of this. And we did figure in a loan cost, about 7.5% or about $330,000 would be for this size space, about the maximum that you would want to do. And that would be on pretty favorable loan terms with an interest rate of 4%. Over about 30 years. This is also comparable, I will point out, to the Hutchinson Enterprise Center is one of the examples that we looked at when we were looking at, or considering the financial aspect of the project. Moving on to the very busy slide of income detail, you can see the industrial space rent of $5 per square foot plus a $6 square foot CAM cost and an occupancy of 90% for both the industrial and office spaces. On the industrial space side, that's about a little bit less than market rate, and the office rent side is much more favorable. I will also point out that we do have a more of a membership model, revenue model in the report that you can take a look at. And happy to answer any questions about that as well. But you can see that the industrial piece makes up nearly 70% of the total revenue for the project. moving on to the expense, you can see that debt service that I talked about 2 slides ago makes up is the largest single line item. And I'll just say, on the CAM side or common area expenses or maintenance, those we saw as having the highest potential for potential sponsorship or community involvement to, for example, maybe help with snow removal and that sort of thing. It might be a fun way for folks to get involved. So pulling that all together, year one income statement of gross income about $71,000, operating and CAM expenses coming in at right about there with a net operating income with a pretty slim margin of $200 per year. And so we just want to make sure that all this is put more detail in the report. And I think one of the key takeaways is that this would be financially feasible, but it will take partners and additional potential funding sources to make happen, and to maybe increase that net operating line so that if there is a larger occupancy percentage or a lower occupancy percentage, you'll have some cushion to weather that. And I'll turn it back over to Carl to finish up.
So Zach mentioned that some funding opportunities might be necessary to help this project out, and we had identified a few that are out there that could be great resources. The most obvious one is this federal EDA Public Works and Economic Adjustment Assistance Grant, which is a grant that's available specifically for communities that are going through energy transitions. So there's set aside for communities like Becker, so one that could fund a substantial amount of this project. So great opportunity there. A couple of programs from the state that are more for some of the infrastructure work around the site that could be tapped into, one of which is also focused specifically on energy transition. Then some other broader thoughts on some potential programming related funding opportunities too. So certainly there's some pieces out there that can help. So drafted a management plan for this facility, some tenant selection criteria, how you would figure out who gets to come in and use that facility, and just the theme here, again and again, here is just keeping it simple, keeping it relatively straightforward, just having some basic criteria saying, for example, it needs to have someone who will be handling or producing a physical product, being a scalable business that could move out, so would really benefit from that incubation, but otherwise not putting too many constraints on it so that it's really user-friendly. Setting up an application process, so they'll be able to bring people in, do an interview, kind of figure out, is this person really a serious, viable business, and recognizing that not all of them will succeed. That's the reality for the incubator, like some will fail, but trying to make sure that people are setting themselves up to do as well as they can, using some of those educational resources that are out there and putting in the work, and making sure then you have ability to track that, making sure that they are, so you can make sure they're complying with their lease. So yep, not every business succeeds, have to have that expectation, but we can still find metrics that will be able to track success long-term and show hopefully a successful outcome. And the final piece we have here, and we know in discussions with the city that long-term the city would not prefer to manage this space, would like to move to a model where it's a nonprofit managing it, and certainly that is doable. We would recommend taking some time in getting there because there are some efficiencies that come out of city management, especially on the front end in terms of staffing and some maintenance pieces. So it's doable, but we want to have it on somewhat stronger financial footing before that happens. We did a lot of research trying to find other examples of this out there and really found no example of a city creating an incubator that was then transitioned. So it doesn't mean it can't be done, but it's just not something we've seen much of. So, and then there are some ways, though, even if it does move on, that the city can retain some oversight, having people on the board designated in that capacity. So ways to make sure that the initial intent stays true, even if it moves to a new operator. So that's the overview, and I'll bring Jacob back up here too.
So if you have any questions for them first, and then I can wrap up. So.
Any questions for the North Span representatives?
Yeah, I got one. So, you had mentioned you were not able to, find any, examples of incubator projects that started. They all start with being owned and run by government entities and then hopefully transition, we're saying we would like the plan to be to transition to a nonprofit. We're saying we cannot find one that's successfully done this?
Could not find one. I'd spent a lot of time looking, but we could not find an example. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Plenty of
And-
successful, examples on either side of it, but not one to
And
another.
then the Hutch one, I think we had one of the questions here, put 3 on, but I think it was, Hutch Technology. was
Sure.
The
Yeah,
company that was down there. So do we know if that was before Hutch Technology came in when they started theirs, or was that kind of after as a response to, losing the big Seagate contract, or?
It was, I mean, there had been a series of cuts at Hutch, so I think it was in the background and something that they knew they needed to guard against, but it wasn't like an immediate response to it. Yeah.
And then, it says there in the appendix, but, just because we have the questions here, so it says Hutch used, TIF. Further, can you explain how, that really perplexed me? I was on the EDA meeting when that was presented there, and that really, I was curious how that was accomplished.
Yeah, well, so obviously the building is publicly owned, but the tenant is a private business. So on the portion that is rented, you can collect a property tax. And so that part can be TIF'd. And so obviously there's some projection happening there of guessing what you're going to take in. And in Hutchins' case, they are a little under what they projected. So that is a risk if you go the TIF route. But they have at least made some of that money back. And they've been, I think, using some other fund to help make up the gap.
What do they reinvest? I mean, they're collecting the TIF as a separate collection, but where does it go?
It was for infrastructure work on the front end.
Okay, so,
yeah.
all right, it's just repaying
Yeah.
some of the money they put forward.
Exactly, yeah.
Any other questions for the North Span reps? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you to Norspan for doing that. The process for this, again, looping back to where we began, this was really you have to have a feasibility study to apply for federal funding. And we wanted to understand where we stood on something like this, because again, we don't have a lot of spaces for beginning startups or entrepreneurs to really start and grow their business or tackle opportunities and do that. EDA had the presentation, number of the concerns which Councilman Hendrickson touched on, and based on our conversation at EDA last week, I think this is something, the information in here is really good. For the public, this was funded by philanthropic dollars. It wasn't public funding, it was a philanthropic organization. And the information in here is key to being able to get other partners, bigger ones, on board with something like this, but not having it city-driven. And the reason for that, EDA, and I'll let Robin, you can jump in, or Mayor. I think there's a few reasons. One, it's a pretty long runway for the city to be involved with no guarantee of exiting. And staffing wise and otherwise, there's quite a bit in that. We're already doing quite a number of things. So how do you tackle that? What's the financial look like? What's the time invested? Additionally, the money, I mean, that's $4.4 million, even though there's equity financing, there's no guarantee of all the grant money. Where does that come from and how does that fund? We also had the conversation about a lot of the feasibility, the incubators that are seen in the other cities are typically anchored by a fairly big organization private-wise that is giving funding to that or driving some of that. And based on what we've seen with data centers and other things in the city, we believe there are a number of those that could drive something like this in the future. And having this here will give us the ability to say, we've done a lot of the work, here's what would work in the city, and then being able to be at the table on how does that look and go forward, but not having the city drive it. So that was EDA's, our discussion at EDA. But this is by no means a waste of time or effort. I think that's a really key point, especially on something like this where we now know what we need to know. There's a lot of good data points that are in here. We understand something that we can take to other private organizations that can do something like this, because there are a lot of good things that come out of incubators. It's just who's going to fund and take a lot of that ownership without the city having to guide that for years to come. So with that, what you're acting on tonight is really acceptance of the report that Norspan produced, which is the incubator feasibility study. So a motion and a second to adopt resolution 2506, which just accepted. It's not locking you into anything, you're purely accepting the report. So, and it will be one of those reports that will be useful for us and many other things. And with that, I'll answer any questions.
Questions for Jacob? I think you summarized the EDA's thoughts very well. Thank you.
Yep.
there's no questions, then we're looking for a motion for resolution 2506.
Make a motion to adopt resolution 2506, accepting the incubator feasibility study produced by the North Span Group Incorporated.
No second.
Great, we have a motion by Robin, seconded by Mike. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, state no. The resolution is passed. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Can I mention one thing, Mayor, too? I want to give thanks to Sherburne County, too, for participating with this. It'd be remiss if Jessica Bartle, who's not here anymore, was pretty instrumental in a lot of that, and then Dan Weber and Brian as well. So I want to make sure I mention that the county was a partner in applying for this and receiving the funds to do it.
Duly noted. Thank you, Sherburne County. Appreciate that. All right. We are ready to move on to administrator and staff reports, and we have a corrective quit claim deed for top 4. Mr. Sanders is up again.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, Council. We have a corrective quitclaim deed. So a couple months ago, council approved the vacation of Pine Street. There's some conditions on that that still have to be satisfied through plating and other things. As part of that process, staff met with Mr. Grant Rademacher, who owns Bill's Superette, and Howie Zimmer from Top 4 to go through the process of here's what these are, what are the next steps, timelines. During that process, there was a piece of, well, what we thought was right-of-way. It is not right-of-way, which we discovered in the surveyor discovered in the title process. The piece of property where the right-of-way line is a little fuzzy. But and during this process, we discovered, the surveyor discovered in the title company, that an erroneous legal description was done. So in 1985, the city sold a property to Top 4 for the building that they have and several others. And you can see that in the RCA under that, well, you actually don't see the whole, but you can see where Top 4 is and where they currently have property. The piece that we're talking about that wasn't deeded to them that should have been, or at least a portion of that, was in that blue rectangle in 1 there in figure 1.1. So what the surveyor and title company found out was City via this contract for deed in 1985 agreed to give Top 4 the property upon satisfaction of that contract for deed, including what's lots 10 and 11 except for the highway portions. Well, in 1986, they had an agreement to modify the original contract for deed because 10 and 11 were left out of the original contract for deed. So the agreement was to modify this upon the time that it was done. Well, in 2002, the city gave the contract for deeded it to Top 4. However, in that deed, the original erroneous legal description was used. So it's missing 2 of the parcels that were supposed to be in there. So the reason that came up in this process is in order to plat, you've got to show title evidence, clear title, and in order to make sure those parcels are able to move forward with that, this needs to be included. So the title company that was used by Hawkinson Anderson and Grant, the title company there, recommended that a corrective quitclaim be issued, which would correct the legal description shown in the agreement to modify. So that's the right one. And then the attorney did review it, kind of had some back and forth on these. Originally, they were concerned about easements, but based on the plating that is upcoming and based on where the state, when they took Highway 10, gave back to the city, was okay with proceeding forward with the title company's recommendation, and then on the plat, we'll make sure that line on the right-of-way is cleared up. So with that, we are seeking for a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2504, a resolution approving corrective quitclaim deed for Top 4 Inc. And there's really, because this was supposed to be done years ago, there's no monetary, he's not paying us for anything. That was all done as part of that contract for deed.
All right. Any questions for Jacob on that? Mike, I think I saw your signature on
Yeah, I was gonna say,
up there as the mayor.
Who's the mayor back there?
Yeah, can we hold him accountable? Is there any action we can take?
Signatures.
My fault.
All right, I hear no questions. Does anybody want to make that motion for resolution 2504?
Make a motion to adopt resolution 2504, approving a corrective quit claim deed for Top 4.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Rick, second by Becky. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, state no. Motion is carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Knutsen's up with the cooperative agreement with the state of Minnesota for a fishing pier at Snuffy's Landing.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you. I'm going to kind of pull you back to how this whole thing started. Mr. Mayor, you weren't part of it when we started this in 2020, and maybe some of the citizens don't know, but we've been working with the Lions since roughly midsummer of 2020 on this park. We redid the initial park agreement with Xcel Energy to restate the lease. We've got a 99-year lease on the park, and in that contract, we put specific milestones in there that we could add to the park. Permanent picnic tables, a pavilion, fishing pier, fishing dock, stuff like that. So we've accomplished a lot of those things, and we've worked cooperatively with the Lions because they've funded that. So from that inception to date, the Becker Lions have donated $86,500 to that park. And our agreement with them was to use that all on park improvements for, capital improvements for the park. We provide the labor side of that. So some of the things that we've done, the pavilion, a lot of sidewalks, a lot of landscaping. We redid a staircase, play structures out there, improved the fishing landing. We work with the DNR on that as well. And one of the things that we had on our wish list was a fishing pier. So that brings us here tonight. So about a year ago, we reached out to the DNR to see if we could get on their list for a grant for a fishing pier, knowing it's very competitive. We met with them again, and this about 3 months ago, and started talking with them. They had their fishery division come out as well, and they looked at our site. They studied the site. They studied where we're looking to locate that. And I like the fact that there's a big business in Xcel that's promoting this. There's a local civic group in the Lions that's helping to fund this, and the city that wants to maintain and build this. So looking at all of that, it made our grant very, very strong. So they submitted a grant on our behalf to try and acquire this pier, and our project was selected. So in order to do that, what we need to do is work out this cooperative agreement with the state. So it's a 20-year life expectancy on this fishing pier. It's a next generation fishing pier. You've seen a lot of the wood structures out in the river or out in the lakes. Big Lake has one. Monticello has two at their parks. This is actually an aluminum, basically like a dock. So it's got a longer gangway, it's lighter weight. We're pretty excited to look at that. We've got a few modifications in the packet. I did put the drawings that they're submitting. We're a little concerned with the current on the river that a 2-inch pipe is going to hold the pier in place. So we're asking to modify some of those things. The state's supporting that as well. But tonight what we're looking for is approval to sign on to the agreement with the state so we can get this thing moving. What we would likely do is to work directly with Hewitt Companies, who's the builder and manufacturer of this. We would, by agreeing to this tonight, I'm also asking for approval to spend some of our CIP up front so we can get this thing rolling, and then the grant would reimburse us back. In talking with the DNR, they've openly admitted that that would cut our time likely in half or more. They told us if we use their funding source and go through all of their paperwork, it likely will take 12 to 18 months pretty easily to get it done. But if we do this and agree to that, we can work directly with Hewitt. We can put a deposit down on the dock, get it rolling, get it built, and get it installed right away. So it's pretty exciting for us as staff. We've worked really hard. We're really excited that the Lions have been so willing to do that. Council's been great to give us that authority to do it. So and if you haven't been out to Snuffy's, get out there. It's pretty cool. And this is just gonna be another feature. One of the components to this that we've committed to, that the Lions have committed to as well, is we're putting parking down below so you can drive down. There's picnic tables right there. We'll get ADA access to the riverbank. We'll pour concrete right out to the bank. We'll put guardrails up there. So if you're in a walker or a wheelchair or little kids, you can kind of have a clear shot right onto the pier, and it'll be pretty well protected. So our responsibility is to put it in by mid-May every year to take it out. It has to be in until October. We'll take it out. We'll either store it on site or we'll bring it back to the shop if we need to store it, if there's vandal problems or concerns out there as well. So kind of a lot to digest tonight, but with that, we are looking for approval to sign that agreement, or I can answer any other questions that you might have towards the project.
Great. Any questions from
No, I
council?
think it's a great idea.
I do too. Who's gonna, go ahead. Who's gonna test this 2-inch pipe?
We've debated that at Public Works. We've got some hefty folks over there with us that we can get out there and look at it. But like I said, because you auger them into the river bottom, and so you're looking at some of this, and we've got some 4 and 6 inch pipes over in Monticello, and the sleeves that go through, and that's what we're looking for is probably a minimum of a 4-inch pipe, to go into the collars that we can hold it because it's designed to float with the current and rise with that. So that's our only concern. If you see that the overall bid for the project was about $25,000. The agreement calls for reimbursement up to $30,000 because we're likely going to have to do some shoreline anchoring upstream to kind of hold it in place, and we'll do some tie-ins into the riverbank. And then we'll tie in the gangway into the riverbank too and reinforce that. They're giving us some leeway on doing that so we can cut some of the, in springtime, the water's pretty aggressive out there. So we've put some pretty big boulders in place to help with shore erosion. And the DNR's given us a thumbs up on everything that we're doing out there.
Great.
Of course, we're engineering it to the nth degree from the bootstrap and suspenders methodology, but we're pretty confident what we're putting on shore isn't going to go anywhere. But we'll take any volunteers should you want to come out there and do a ribbon cutting with the Lions.
What do you put these pipes in with?
Basically, you bring them into the ground. You can either drive the pilings in, or it's a simple pipe wrench, and you just anchor them in. There's just like a corkscrew auger.
It's all boulders in there.
Yep. What we did is, in anticipation of this, I sent our streets supervisor and a couple of staff over to Monticello to work with them as they took theirs out to get a firsthand experience on how they handle their stuff, so they could kind of see what we were dealing with. Hewitt has done one of these other docks at a lake experience, so it's a roll-in platform and it doesn't move. So we know that we need to beef it up a little bit because of the current that we're dealing with. But that's what the proposal is right now, is to auger them into the ground like a corkscrew, and we're thinking 4 touch points into the base of the river, and then come back and we'll tie it to shore as well.
What about debris? I mean,
Pardon
you
me?
think of debris, you think in the spring, when there's a lot of logs, trees, things that are coming down, and if any of them get close to the shore, I mean, you get a good hefty log, and that could.
Yep, we've looked at that as well. Our first thought was there's large plastic. The gangway itself walks out at 6 feet, and then the platform itself is 6 feet by 16 feet long. And there's plastic, about 12-inch tall plastic components that float, right? And we've looked at that and said, and even asked Hewitt if we should look at pontoons instead, so it can cut the water and debris could come through. The flip side is they're concerned that more would get lodged into that and put more stress on that. So it's just one of those things that we're just gonna have to monitor when we go down there. Like we check the garbages, weekly out there. We just may have to go down there more as we see that in the spring. And we may hesitate putting it in, right away in the spring, depending on how high the water is as well.
Did I hear you say putting it in May?
That's what they're looking for us to get it in for the fishing opener, is really what they want
Yeah,
to try and do.
because by that time, the spring
Typically.
runoff has gone down.
Yep. Typically, we're in a pretty
I
good
have a
spot
lot
to
of
be there.
experience on that part of the river.
The state will give us an exception if there's a cause by nature, which is high water mark, so we can get away from that because of the aggressive current. So, yeah, safety is a concern for them as well. So we've tried to look at all this stuff. Like I said, we're trying to get local folks that have been involved with this before to make it work, but staff's pretty excited to get out there and see if we can make this happen and put it in the ground, so.
Yeah, great project, and a huge thank you to the Lions. They continue to really step up, so.
Yeah, and that's the excitement with the pull tab booth going in and using the facility to do more out at the golf course as well. So it's a great partnership. I mean, I can't thank the Lions enough for what they've done for our community in general, but the city specifically as it relates to this park as well. So it's pretty cool vision that they share with us in making it happen, so.
Awesome.
So I've looked through the contract, we've looked through it there, as far as our obligations and stuff, I mean, nothing's jumping out, so I didn't see anything, but.
Yep, legal's reviewed this. I forgot to add that as well. I did send it to Scott and Dave, and they had no concerns with that. The concern they had going in, there was some language in here about wildflower cover and stuff. It doesn't pertain to this. It's just our standard protocol that they use. They've looked at the site and they're not concerned with that at all from the DNR's not, nor is legal. Legal's only concern is they have another community that's got a fishing dock, and they had it vandalized. So they said, how are you guys gonna do this? And we showed them the area. It's behind a gate. We feel comfortable. The nice thing is 6 feet, we can bring it back. We can haul this thing in 2 parts back to the shop if we need to, or take it down to wastewater in a fenced area and lock it in the off season. So PD does a good job of getting out there and patrolling that with the lights out there now. The citizens have been really good about policing themselves, and we've seen less vandalism out there than we've seen in quite some time. So we're optimistic that we can make all this work as well. So
Awesome. Any other questions for Phil? If not, we would entertain a motion for the cooperative agreement, resolution 2505.
I make a motion to approve resolution 2505, agreement with the state of Minnesota.
We have a motion by Mike. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Rick. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, state no. That motion carries. Thank you.
thank you.
And we're on to the Phase 2 PD City Hall project furniture plan, Mr. Rude.
Mayor Kobinger and City Council, at the October 1st, 24 council meeting, the council approved the Phase 1 furniture plan, which is the entire addition property, the new front entrance, and all of the police department, that furniture package. And at the time, there was also kind of a preliminary look at Phase 2, and we're at Phase 2 now. And what we'd like to do, the plan has not changed at all from what was included in the packet. It was the green highlighted areas that are for this phase, which is a small conference room, 4 offices, the main conference room, and then the food shelf. Those are the areas impacted with this package. And as a reminder, we had allowed about $200,000 for the furniture project. The first phase was, I believe, right around $120,495. This package, and it wasn't included in the packet, but it is at your dais spot. The detailed plan calls for $38,949.82. which brings the total to $159,445. Staff has reviewed all of these plans for the offices. There are 2 offices that we are not going to furnish at this time. We have enough furniture that we can move into those, so if they are staffed in the future, they'll be available for that. And so with that, our request would be, or I'd also add that the price is gonna change on February 1st. This is all at state bid pricing. At the same amount, I did cross-compare amounts in this one that were the same items as in the first one. The prices are the same. And so prices are going to go up February 1st, so we'd like to request approval on the current state bid pricing. And so with that, staff would request approving the Phase 2 furniture plan as presented, or in the event that there's some minor modifications, that you would allow that in the amount of $38,949.82. And I would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Greg on the Phase 2 furniture plan? If not, we'd entertain a motion to approve that.
Make a motion to approve the Phase 2 furniture plan as presented.
Awesome, we have a motion by Rick. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Becky. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, state no. Motion carries. Thank you. Consent agenda, Mr. LaRue again.
Mayor Kobinger and council members, items for approval on tonight's consent agenda include approve the hiring and termination report, approve the 2025 revised pay equity report submission. The only difference between this and what was in the packet is the inclusion of the 2 collective bargaining units in the scale. Number 3, approve change order number 4 in the amount of $22,658.48 for the Police Department City Hall project. And approve partial pay request number 6 in the amount of $816,924.92 to Apex Construction Group for the Police Department City Hall project. And I will be happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions on the consent agenda? If not, we'd entertain a motion to approve that.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Motion by Robin, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Rick, snuck it in there. Any discussion? All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, state no. Consent agenda is approved. Need a motion to pay the bills.
A motion, we pay the bills?
Motion by Becky to pay the bills, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Robin, is there any discussion? Not, all in favor of paying the bills, please state aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, state no. Bills are paid. Is there anything else anyone would like to bring forward tonight? If not, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Or do you have something?
I did talk to Shooter about the lumber property. And, he's bringing in a new realtor, and he is gonna divide that up a bit.
Good.
So, cause the concern is the one large
Hard to sell.
parcel is pretty tough to deal with. So, he says it's probably gonna be in February before that happens.
Okay. Great.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn by Mike.
I'll second.
A second by Becky. Any discussion? All in favor of adjourning, please state aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, state no. Meeting's adjourned at 5:56.
And the executive session will start shortly.
Perfect. Thank you, Tony.
Robert's Rules of Order note.
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn isn't debatable, because otherwise
You're
you
right.
can extend debate.
Good point.
Not
Thank
adjourn.
you.
You know, somebody's sitting home right now, that's not debatable.
Thank you, parliamentarian Rick. I needed that.
I've been on the other end, I've been corrected on that by.
Right?
Exec session. This is all one stream right now, it's just gonna continue for exec session.
All right.
Yeah, and you are still on live television?
Okay, so you gotta be nice.
Keep all the rules in mind.
Why did we bring the lights up?
Right.
I did, yeah.
It was really dark
Yeah.
in here.
Well, if
Got my
the
nap in.
the lights were turned off for the pictures.
Yeah,
Look better in dimmer lighting, Mark.
I didn't feel that way.
Mark the Godfather sitting back there, he's like, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone,
Oh, thick.
got it? You guys got it?
Thank you much.
So is this just being recorded or televised?
Televised, it sounds like.
Why are we doing that?
I don't know, we were talking about this here.
Good night, Tony. Drive safe.
See that? Chicken teriyaki meal deal.
Everybody set?
Yes.
All right, we'll call the executive meeting of January 21st, 2025 to order.
That Hubbard property, that's what it's.
First thing up is the Parkland acquisition discussion. Mr. Kua?
Mayor Colbinger and members of council. Thanks for the opportunity to discuss Parks project with you all. So just kind of rewinding the clock a little bit, this has been a topic at Parks and Rec Commission for a number of years. Kind of with the impetus, obviously, with our park system in general as how it serves the community, in addition to the 2019 Parks Master Plan that was completed with HKGI. It's been an ongoing discussion as us in the parks leadership has certainly been identified by our community members. We have a wonderful park system in Becker. I'd put it up against anybody on a per capita basis. But there is one weakness in our system that we've been kind of monitoring over the years, and it is for our citizens on the east side of the Elk River. Currently, there is no parkland that serves that community. Jacob helped me out with some numbers of residences on the maps that you've seen. So there's 67 residences in Fossum Fields, 47 in Elk Wind Creek, and then 117 between Riverbend, River Oak Estates, and River Oak Villas, making a total of 233 residences on that side, within close proximity of what the property we're specifically talking about tonight. So I get calls pretty routinely, a few times a year, from residents on that side just asking if there's any plans for parkland for that part of our community. And unfortunately, it's not an easy answer because there really isn't. So as we've been talking about priorities rolling into 2025 and beyond with our Parks Commission, one of the really kind of laser focused has been on, are there opportunities out there to serve that part of our community? And it happens that there is a really attractive property available, currently being marketed, that you can see highlighted both on the Beacon map and then kind of zoomed out a little bit on a Google map. It's just north of our compost area. I'm sure you're all familiar with the property that we're talking about. It's a little over 6 acres. Should this not be something that we entertain, we don't really have a roadmap for other opportunities down the road. As Phil Knutson has assisted greatly in this kind of putting this together. We haven't identified other landowners that have any interest in either whether it's further development or farmland that would be available. The only other alternative really would be buying up individual lots within some of the developments. Those are ranging anywhere from 50 to 75,000 a piece, and you're not getting a whole lot of property. Then you're dealing with parking and access and all those things. So this is really, I know it's an opportunity that we've talked with Parks and Rec Commission that they're very excited about. So they've recommended that we advance this to council for consideration at an executive meeting such as this. So it is currently being marketed for $200,000. We've kind of done our due diligence on speaking with the landowners to see if that is a firm number, if there'd be any considerations with naming rights to parks like we have in our system currently. They are getting a lot of interest, so there isn't any desire for them to lower that $200,000 price tag at this point. Is kind of what we've received from them. But with that being said, and just the lack of other options, potentially for 15, 20 years, we could still be sitting here without an opportunity to really serve that community. So that's why we really wanted to bring it up at this point and just kind of get direction from the council on if this is something we would like to entertain. The process would be, we kind of talk about it here, if it would be something that you're interested in, we would work towards a February meeting with a city council meeting where we would present, kind of work with legal on a purchase agreement, a proposed amount of earnest money that would be put down, and then it would be presented to council in that fashion should we want to move forward with it. So very casual dialogue at this point as far as where we are on this property, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that any of you would have. The proximity to the existing core density of households is really intriguing. And also, the property is kind of being farmed, so it's relatively flat. Doesn't have a whole lot of tree removal or very difficult terrain that we'd have to put a lot of ground or earthwork in place for. But it would be kind of planting that flag. And should it progress, my plan would be to, as we have a lot of parks on the west side of the river, there's a lot of access to different parks with different amenities, so you can kind of choose your own adventure as a user. But with this being kind of the only park on that side, we really have a large community outreach effort. QR codes on walking trails where you can scan it, and we develop a survey to really get a lot of input from the people in proximity of what they would want this park to look like. Being the size of it, it's really a clean slate for a lot of creative usage, whether it's standard play equipment or more natural or paths. I mean, there's a lot of neat things you can do with parkland such as this, but the takeaway would be we'd really involve the citizens on that side of the river on developing that plan. So that would be after the fact, but kind of the approach we would take to bringing it to life. It wouldn't be a 2025 project for actually putting parkland in place. It would be, the goal would be to acquire it, and then in the next 2, 3, 4 years, whatever it happens to be, really bring the park to life through their involvement. But happy to, and Phil, if there's anything else that I'm missing, feel free to jump in, but I'd entertain any questions or comments that, or direction that you may have.
Questions for Josh from council at all?
I don't know about a question, but it's a lot of money for
I was gonna say, is
brownfield
that
and
normal for
park.
real estate? You know, I don't know cost of real estate. I'm in denial how expensive things are. Is that pretty average what they're asking?
When you're thinking about 6 acres, so as we talked about, like, it's probably not real attractive for a developer to come in because you're not gonna get a whole lot of lots. We don't see it as a very attractive piece for a developer to come in and purchase that. So it's likely maybe a single landowner on a residential basis might take it and build a house and just have property. But when you look at, you know, some of the available lots, and maybe even Jacob could speak to that in some of these developments, you know, if you're getting a 10,000 to 12,000 foot lot for 60, 70,000, when you scale that out to 200,000, that's over 6 acres. It's not out of line. One of the parts of the process we would probably have to do an appraisal for it, which would be a city expense as well. But our initial feelings is the appraisal would come back with this being an appropriate price for that land.
Gotcha.
I believe one of the neighboring, so we had the property down, the 0110 down on the right there. And then, so we got the property across the street there. The one to the right of that, when we were discussing with that landowner about potentially purchasing, I wanna say that was 30,000 acre was.
This is roughly 30, it's about 33.3.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Which is fairly typical.
But I will say the 30, we looked at that and so that was, you know, we were looking at for like well exploration, things like that, possibly the next, you know, addition for Fossum Fields or whatever, but at that time we turned down the 30,000 offer.
All right.
Wow.
Turn it on.
Tap it.
Council recognizes Phil Knudsen.
One of the things, so the property owner to the north of Elkwind, Penny Hammer, had a meeting with her in regards to, I was looking for one, right? And just to see her interest, gauge her interest in what they're doing. They have 109 acres that the family owns there. They have no interest in selling it. They want to farm it. The boys want to farm it. They don't want to develop it. They don't want to sell any of it to the city, or anybody for that matter. They want to farm it, which we respect that. But she did let us know, this was probably 3 months ago, that she put in a bid for irrigated farmland, which decent soils, and she lost the bid at $19,500 an acre. So less than 4 years ago, you could have bought that for $12,000 an acre. So we agree that the price tag on this is a little bit high, but the value of the land and the location of the land, the availability of the land is what it is as well, and we're locked out where we're at. So the appraisal side of it, you know, highest and best use is, you know, residential, you know, development. is probably gonna come back where I think we're probably favorable, even though it is a decent amount of money. That area's been underserved for 20 years. And we can all point back to development, should have, could have, future phase, you know, whatever. We changed our philosophy on how we do that going forward. But I think we've done our due diligence in a fair amount to get us to this point. The appraisal would get us over that hurdle should we choose to go there. The family right now is agreed that we don't have anything in writing. We have the old handshake with the family who owns the property, that they're not going to entertain any other offers because the family would love to see it as a park instead of selling it to a single family development. The 10 acres south of that we considered before, a single person has bought that and is placing a resident on the 10 acres of city property. So that's not what we want to see there either, but it could happen in this area, the 6.4 acres. So just a little background information on some of the work we've done with the land pricing.
Well, with the cost of putting in infrastructure for a development, 6.4 acres is not a high demand parcel. Would they, if we have an appraisal done, would they accept the appraised price?
We could show that to them. I don't know if they would or not. I did share with them that we would have to, before we would purchase anything, we could look at their 200,000, work on earnest money, but appraisal would have to be what we'd have to get in front of you guys to make for final consideration. And until we know what that is, you know, I don't know that answer, Mike. Right now, what they told me was they're not willing to entertain any other offers because they've had 3 other. We're the 4th person, you know, on it. We were the first one there, but we're one of 4 that have inquired on that. They understand that those other 3 could draft very quickly, but that development, in looking at it with Jacob, there was some interest in that. If you think about Dawson Court, that layout with a single bulb cul-de-sac would lay out favorable to that, so you could roughly get 12 or 14 lots in there, but the cost of developing that is significant. What we see in our community, putting the infrastructure in versus the end value of the lot is what's holding people back from that. So I don't think it's likely that somebody's gonna come in there.
That was my thinking also.
Yeah.
But without an appraisal, I'm hesitant to commit to a purchase. I mean, if it comes in at 220,000, I don't have a problem with it.
What we would do, we would tie our purchase agreement towards that, you know, there would be a stipulation of that, that's an out on that. You know, our close date would be pushed out there, and the closing would be contingent upon, you know, the favorable valuation or appraisal of the property to the subsequent selling price of that. Yeah, so we can make it out on that. That's why if we get direction tonight, we'd work with legal to help craft that purchase agreement, and then we'd present that to you before we could execute that purchase agreement. And again, that doesn't bind us into the agreement, you know, but we would show the Hubbards that we're serious about this. They wouldn't continue to aggressively market it.
What's an appraisal gonna cost us?
I look back on that, Rick,
5,000 or 6,000, that would be my guess, tops, on the high side.
Well, I'm thinking minimum.
Oh, really?
5.
Oh, no, I don't think so. It's a pretty straightforward comp.
Of course,
It
it's
is
just our land.
residentially
It's
zoned
just our
property.
land, and there's probably no comparisons.
Yeah, I was trying to look back. I looked at, so we used Nagel Properties, I believe it was, or Nagel Appraisals when we did some of the easement, and they were very good to work with. They came recommended from our engineers, good relationship. I can get that information as well and share that with you and let them know what it would be on that parcel.
Well, I mean, the reason I'm bringing this all up is because I like the idea of that piece of land versus what we talked about a year ago. But if it appraises at 100,000, I'm not willing to spend 200,000.
And staff is sensitive to that as well, and understand we don't want to try and bind your hands with that, but, you know, the opportunity is there.
Yeah.
We're not making any more dirt, and so we wanted to try and get something in place or get direction. Either we put a pin in it and it's gone, or we take another step and keep moving with it.
Right. I mean, it's got a lot going for it. It's high ground, which in that area is not necessarily easy to find if you go south of there. And I knocked on a lot of doors in those neighborhoods, and, I mean, people are looking for something, and I think they've been patient a long time, so I don't see a downside with moving forward with getting the appraisal and figuring some of this out, because it's our option right now. I mean, if you look at that whole east side of the river, right, we have the archery park is kind of the northern anchor, if you will. And then coming down, this would make sense. It would be a good use, I think.
I mean, it's close to a lot of residents right there. I mean, they can walk to it, and ride their bikes to it and stuff like that.
100%, we completely agree with that. And we can get that information and as a group, we can talk it through as far as how the next steps play out. I think, working on a purchase agreement and tying a contingency on that agreement to appraised value, coming back in and appraise cost with that so we can work to get some of these questions answered. If we want to take another step, but I don't think it's going to bind us to anything. I can reach out to the family and let them know that we are continuing to move forward with that, so they're showing good faith on
Yeah,
the city.
I'd like to get the appraisal done.
I think if we, when we look at what this, I totally agree with everybody that this is underserved. I think we all agree on that. I think when we say how many people will this affect, I know we use numbers from across 67 there. I think this is primarily gonna be for these two for the Fossum Fields and for, I mean, if you think in the neighborhoods across the street there, if you have 6, 7, 8-year-old kids, you're probably not gonna bring them across that. That's a long way to go for little feet. So I mean, when we say how many people is this gonna affect, it's really just gonna be these two neighborhoods. We don't wanna maybe inflate it with, by saying all these other, cause they're probably not
It's
gonna.
the argument we looked at, Rick, taking these folks across 67 to go to the 212. If we put anything over there, it's not.
Yeah, they're not gonna,
Right.
exactly.
So we can put both ways. And you're likely gonna serve some township folks out there too. There's several communities out there, or homes out there as well.
So just kind of a idea that just came to me here. What if we didn't do this? What if we took the existing compost site, moved the compost out to our archery area? We have land out there that's unused. What if we moved compost out there and then turned the archery area, since we already own that land, be a smaller footprint, but what if we turned that into a park?
We would just have to ask some questions from the SCORE funding on what, it would probably be our cost to move all of that infrastructure that's there. So we
I'll
can.
bet you it's not $200,000 though.
No, you're probably right. I would be surprised if it was, but we would just have to get power out to that corner, because we use kind of that corner back at 80. We don't want to use the hill. So we could do some due diligence on that, is take a look at that.
I mean, it's not as centrally located. I mean, it is a little farther down, but I mean, there's a walking path there. So I mean, it's, but I mean, that would be land that is a smaller footprint, probably looks like about half, maybe, I don't know, 2.5.
What is
That's
it?
in lights up, actually.
Yeah, we got lights.
Lights inside and,
Boom, play area.
So I mean, but we own, since we own that already,
Actually, that compost site, to me, looks like it'd be a little small. You'd have no parking.
it'd be smaller, definitely.
Parking would be the
It
issue.
is a little bit smaller.
Parking would be a definite issue. That it's a pretty small parcel.
Yeah, it'd definitely be
is it?
smaller, but we own it.
You know?
Not to put anybody on the spot, but what are we sitting at with our parkland dedication fees right now?
Our available balance, well, we're carrying over 900,000 in our parks CIP, or our parks fund. So and this is something we talked about too, is in Parks and Rec Commission as well. Looking at opportunities, and I think there's a favorable horizon for more parkland dedication coming into the community, with whether new business partners and things like that. So our Parks Fund is very, very healthy. That's why kind of bringing this with a little bit of urgency, we feel is important to not miss this opportunity, just because they're probably, well, but you bring up a good point. If that's something on that compost, it's definitely worth looking at. But as far as from the group's perspective, sitting with the fund balance we do have and the timing of this opportunity to serve that group, we didn't want to not bring it and miss the opportunity where, we're in the same position 15 years from now.
What do you mean the park CIP? Are you talking the CIP plan that we have right now?
Our Parks Fund,
okay, because that's.
Yep, not this.
For other areas though, I mean, that's.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, there we go. So, yeah, Josh is right. So Park CIP has approximately $1 million in it right now. In 2020, I was just pulling it up, in 2026, we had plugged in $125,000 as a placeholder for top priorities from the study. And that was, you can correct me, Josh, that was with the intention of something on the east side of the river. So we have $125,000 in there for that. And we still have a very healthy balance. Even in 27, we're dipping into the mid 300,000s. But this is in line and doesn't really deplete any of the resources that we have for any of our other park plans. So this is.
But I mean, we don't have $900,000 to spend on this. I mean, that money is earmarked for other places, right? I mean, that's the entire CIP.
Some of it's earmarked. This is within parks. So within the revolving capital fund, within our parks reserve, we have around $1 million. And then we have our strategic park plans, but within there we have additional reserves. So like we've discussed over time, we're not necessarily levying for the next year's spend. We're levying for over time. So we have a plan over time. This would fit in the bucket on the short term. And then we have an opportunity to adjust in the long term. You know, we make this purchase, now we look over the next 15 to 20 years. We might have to adjust the levy slightly, but would be within the metrics that we're tracking for that long-term piece. So we have sufficient reserve. We wouldn't have to, for this purchase, we don't have to go and look for something or increase any levy. This would fit within our current plan and still leave us with a lot of opportunities with a lot of the strategies we have within the park system.
The other thing I'd like to add to that is Josh has done a good job of recruiting business partners to kick in. A good example is over at the community center with the things that we have there. It's turned out really well.
Yeah, there's a lot of partners over there.
I really like the flexibility of that. This might be a little bit out there too, but I really like your idea about gathering a lot of public input, and if we decided, you know, what if we had that 6 acres, what is a viable piece? Let's say that the community partners come together and say, the park we wanna build is 4 acres. You know, what is the logistics with if we had an additional 2 acres?
Parking.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I think there's a lot of flexibility with this piece, cause it's large enough where, you know, some other smaller spaces might limit our creativity with parking and things like that.
But yeah, the idea of the compost site is great, but it is an extremely small parcel.
Yeah, it's.
You know, you're not gonna get much in there.
With a larger park too, you can have some green space. You know, we've kind of taken it as we work, Josh, Chris and I, you know, on the park side of it. Snuffy's is a good example, but Carly and Pleasant Valley, open green space, let kids be kids, let them play a game that make up their own rules, do their own thing. So you can actually have some amenities and you can also have some open spaces as well. So that's what this land could afford you as well.
Right.
So.
And of course, we are trying to serve the citizens in that direct area, but, you know, depending on the direction of the park's planning, it could also be a standalone attractive amenity for the rest. We see a lot in parks planning where they're doing like bicycle pump tracks and bicycle courses with, you know, terrain, different ways to kind of maximize the footprint of it, but also create something new that isn't in any of our parks currently. And there's endless opportunities for that while protecting green space and having your traditional, you know, slide and deck platform play areas too. But so that's what excites, you know, the commission is the different opportunities for a clean slate, but also finding what the needs and the desires are of those particular users.
Kind of maybe an ancillary issue, but so the L road, the east-west, that's a dirt road, and I know we get, with the compost site, we get a lot of pushback that, you know, what is there, 3 or 4 residents that live on that road. That's a township road, and they get rather angry when we, when compost traffic uses that road and kicks up dust. This is very sure to exasperate that. Is that something we maybe?
Take my parks hat off and put my streets hat on. That's another shared road, and we've talked with the township. That would be the next shared road project, just like we did with 153rd, 127th, and we shared that paving, and leave it as a rural section. and not put curb and gutter out there is a possibility. They wanted to do the, like, when we talked about the other section, they wanted to do that double chip and fog seal, which I'm not a fan of. It's a 3 to 5 year Band-Aid at best, and it's pretty expensive. But that would be something that we would look at this project as well. Because you're gonna get the phone calls, it's not a matter of if they're coming, it's when. We diverted traffic when we just reconstructed Lobelia, and it was daily. We've got several phone calls on a daily basis of, dust control and washboards and stuff. So it is something that we would consider, but it's a shared road on our shared road plan, and it's the next step that we would consider with the township for something like that in a reconstruction, and you're looking at probably shared costs, $250,000 to $300,000 tops, and we slowly fund that shared program without having it really dedicated, to any specific project yet. We'll just slowly put funds in the street portion of that we can do something like this should the township have the funds and want to lead that as well. But we would address that by the time, hopefully, put it together, if we acquire the property, start building on that, people start using it, and we time that street to be improved at the time you start to open and introduce that park.
And I think if we, let's say, everything there plays out, I think the only reason people don't use that road more right now is because it's dirt and the other way is tar. If that road becomes tar, that is gonna be the main.
Everybody's gonna use it.
We don't wanna upset our township friends, but, we've talked about, you could argue that should actually be a cul-de-sac, from either section, and that would really upset people, I'm amazed how many people use that as a cut across right now, but they do, so.
I don't understand going on the dirt.
Yeah, so.
You can take the asphalt part,
So we'd keep it narrow, just.
It's no longer.
Down, make it a hard T versus, because it's actually a shared drive. There's a lot of engineering that we've already talked about with that and what you could do to try and alleviate that, so we don't have that same, racetrack curve over there, but. Point is well taken and not ignored by any means. We've already looked at that as well.
Well, I'd be in favor with, I guess if we're looking for just direction to staff with moving forward with, the bids and then bring those back, is that kind of what you're looking for tonight then to?
Yeah, come back at a regular council meeting in February, with probably get working on a PA behind the scenes, in preparation for the full council meeting. So we, as well as, would we want a quote on what the appraisal would be and not commit to the appraisal, but.
I would request for the appraisal is what I would do.
I can have a quote for appraisal back by the 4th. I don't think that would be an issue to get that back.
No.
We can take a look at that and hold off on purchasing it until after that point in time. You approve the appraisal, then we could move forward then.
Especially if the buyer's already expressed that the seller, not buyer. The seller's already expressed that they're willing, they've kind of given us first right without.
I think they'll be okay with it as long as they see that we've got movement.
Yeah.
We're not sitting on our hands with this, so I think they'll be okay with that.
Okay. I saw quite a bit of nodding up here, so
Yeah.
think we have direction on that.
Are there any other questions or information you would want us to have for that meeting in addition to just seeking the appraisal? Or I think we're all pretty well on good understanding of the ask. Okay.
I think maybe as far as the compost piece, maybe just wait, and that's our Alamo if we have to fall back to it, but I would say maybe don't do anything else on that. If everybody's good with that, just wait on that.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, looks like we're on to the round table.
Yeah, nothing.
Anything else? I have a couple things just for informational purposes. The track meeting was tonight before the council meeting, so that's Together Reaching Area Kids. Lieutenant Lynn Bloom sits on that. I think Mayor Bertram did, so I was invited. So we went. They adopted a theme called New Year, New Kindness. So they've met, the group recently met with the Chamber of Commerce and they're looking for it to be kind of a cooperative way to build resiliency in our youth. So there's some clergy involvement, the city has representation, the county probation officer attends these meetings, and it's just a way to try to get everybody working on healthy children and teens, so. You might see. Right now, it's kind of been quarterly. We're gonna meet again in March with hopefully, we're gonna do a logo contest that the kids can be involved with and try to get some more specific plans moving forward to try to bring everything under one umbrella, cause everybody's kind of doing their own little thing right now. So keep that in mind. Post office update, Grant Rademacher has done a lot of work. Holy cow. I met with him on Monday for a long time. So he did a lot of work and really thought he had an agreement to put the post office right next to G. Will. This unknown person, is not part of it anymore. So there was a woman either in Illinois or Colorado that said no to it. She has now been replaced. So they are gonna send a new contingent out from Washington DC. Congressman Emmer's office has been awesome to work with. It was not super long after I contacted them that all of a sudden they're gonna send 4 people out from DC. It was supposed to be tomorrow, they canceled, and now it's gonna be sometime in February. So I've been assured that the decision maker is gonna be here that day. On site, so, it's maybe something we wanna talk about at the regular meeting in February, but I would like to relay to them that from the city standpoint, the only option is to have a full operating post office here with the delivery personnel and everything.
Yes.
Because sending those folks to Monticello, I Google mapped it in the morning and at night, and you're gonna add between an hour and 20 minutes to their day. You wouldn't think it, but the bottleneck that's there is a mess.
And we're gonna have no employees too.
Yeah, it's gonna hurt with employee recruitment and retention, so I hope I didn't speak out of turn, but I've been telling Congressman Emmer's office that there isn't another option as far as we're concerned, so I don't know if we wanna look at a resolution for that February 1 just to solidify that, but kudos to Grant, he's done a lot of work. So we'll hopefully find out more the end of that week.
So, resolution's cool, but really, it isn't our decision at the end of the day. I mean, is it just more of a, we would strongly encourage you to, if at all possible, do this? I mean, it's not our decision.
It's not our decision, but, I don't wanna be there speaking on behalf of the city when we haven't had that discussion. There just hasn't been time to have that discussion, but looking at the financials and looking at what it would do to a lot of things, I think we should take a stance at some point to just make it a little more transparent and a little more, it would carry a little more weight, I think, if we could tell those people that and also relay that to Congressman Emmer's office. He's gonna send his constituent services manager out. She was gonna come tomorrow, obviously not, but she will be coming in February, to let the post office people know that his office is very interested and is following this very closely. And wants to assist the city to do what we can to keep the most operations here. Their fallback plan is a 900 square foot facility. That's tiny. And with the amount of packages and things that come, I think it's gonna delay our mail service. They're up to 8 routes total out of the Becker office. They just redid that, within the last weeks or months. And so they have 7 regular routes and 1 that they call an aux or an auxiliary route. So we're pumping a lot of mail through there. And I think it's really short-sighted if they think a storefront is gonna do that, if we experience any kind of growth over the next 10 years. They already screwed up because they could have built this facility much cheaper when everything was mobilized. So I just wanna let them know that if you put a Band-Aid on it with a storefront, we're gonna be back in 6 or 8 years when we experience growth saying, we need these
I'm
people
not
back.
sure it'll be that long.
Maybe not.
Even with Amazon, I mean, the more Amazon there is, I mean, Amazon's growing still, so the more, every time another package is there, that's,
Right.
they get the contract for it usually,
Yeah.
so.
And I know it's not our decision, Rick, but I just think if we come out and it gives the congressman something to work with and
I
tells
don't
them.
see any harm in passing a resolution supporting a local post office of some, whatever size we,
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, it's between 3,500 and 4,000 square feet that Grant had proposed. I mean, the whole
what's the old
process,
one? How big is
Docks and
the old one?
everything, I mean, yeah.
you know, I don't know. I'm not sure, but
Not much.
you would die. I mean,
Well,
it's
there's a lot of
absurd
room in
what their
back, but you
Oh,
process
don't
there
even
is.
is,
see.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
They don't create the drawings. They tell Grant, you have to create the drawings. And he's like, I'm not the post office. And they said, that's how we do it. Only our government could screw that up so bad. I'm like, I'd sketch something out.
Yeah.
Right? But he altered his building plans so a loading dock can go in there and he's done a phenomenal job, so. I told him I'll be there and he can be good cop and I'll be bad and badder cop, if that's a word, but I just think it would be a really dumb decision, so.
Yeah.
That's
So-
what,
I think it's a good idea, and the fact that I think a lot of the community doesn't understand it's not at the city level, that it's federal.
Yeah,
You
I
know what I
got,
mean?
I got people
Or
talking to
I'm
me
like,
all the
that's not
time
our
about it.
choice, yeah.
I tell them, it's not our decision.
Which I get, a lot of people don't understand that, but yeah.
I think it's a win to get the decision maker here and to let
Yes.
that person hear that, here's our expectations.
So they're gonna bring the decision maker in from DC, or this is a regional, or Illinois, or wherever, this is a regional person of some sort, so,
It's a team of 4 is what I've been told.
okay, all 4 from the post office?
Correct.
Okay. For expensive people flying here, what are they hoping, I mean, who's gonna give them how much should we be involved in? I mean, do we need to give them an itinerary? Do we need, what can we do to
No,
aid
it's
them?
their meeting. They reached out to Grant after having ghosted him for quite some time and said, we have new leadership and we're interested again in coming to listen to what the possible proposal is. So.
So really, it's more of a meeting with them than it's.
It is,
we're just-
they're looking at a couple options, I guess, for what they're gonna do. One of my big concerns, if they move it, they're talking about the post office boxes going away for an interim period, and, I mean, we have senior citizens that count on that, and so. Grant's supportive of us being there, or myself being there, he's supportive of Congressman Emmer's people being there. And so hopefully someone's just ready to make a decision. So,
So does
Yeah.
the post office lease the facility?
Mhm.
Do they lease all
they
facilities?
do,
That's
yep,
what
they don't own any of their own, everything's leased.
I think they might own some of the big ones,
That's possible,
like St. Cloud. I think the St. Cloud one they
Well,
own.
they've screwed that one up too, try to get in and
Yeah.
out of there.
Good God.
Holy
Exactly.
cow.
That's why I
Boy.
think they own it.
I did a deep dive this weekend, there's a lot of studies that show the problems with post offices are, out of state, people who lease them. Places, and there's black mold issues, and there's
Well,
all
just
these
look at 'em.
things.
Yeah.
And they have the perfect setup, Grant's gonna be there, manage it like another part of his building. I mean, I just think we owe it to him as a business too, to let him know that we support this idea.
Oh, yeah, I've never understood why they didn't, I mean, they were fools, they had the
Right?
design, I mean, you had a willing partner, you had a build the suit type of lease, and
Well, it kind of surprised me because, when Virgil built that complex, he got them to move out of the old post office and move in there before their lease was up. He didn't charge any extra for that time, but he got them to move before their lease was even expired.
Virtual
And now
magic.
you can't even get them to look at a place.
Yeah, so, something to think about. Anything else on the roundtable?
I just had a question on, coalition utility cities, so it come up last week, probably more so for you, Mr. Mayor, kind of what involvement, you wanted to take with that, or with the, that, or then the, yeah, CMRP, with both of those meetings, those are ones that, Mayor Richmond attended in the past. I've attended the coalition utility cities for probably, well, the whole time I've been here, so whatever, 12 years or whatever. but-
When are the, I know I'm signed up for the CMRP. I'm gonna attend it virtually Thursday. That's once a month. So I have that penciled into my schedule.
The coalition is twice a year, I think, more formal meetings, and it's really staff level type conversations in between.
Yep, I even attended those on council, so I'm very comfortable doing that.
I didn't even recognize some of the people still.
Probably.
Then, Mayor McCumber.
They might be. Hey, Randy Sabart's still here. There's gotta be some other people that survived 20 years in local government. But I would be okay with that if people are okay with that.
I mean, I'll attend them too, but I
Yeah.
just want to see on yours.
Yeah, I think that's an important organization, obviously.
And then, I saw from, Shannon's email the other day, Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities, when did we ever join that? I guess I wasn't aware that we were.
This is our second year. The first year, we got a discount rate to do it, but this is our second year,
Yes, I wasn't aware
second
that we were even part
renewal.
of it. Although it makes sense if we keep on getting the emails.
Well,
Yeah, we do.
because
I think we joined in 23.
I know about 5 years ago, Brzezinski and I went down and attended a few, we were like asked to come as guests or something, so we were, all right, fine, we'll come sit in. And it was all LGA, which has no bearing to it, and everything they talked about was probably 80% of their budget, 80% of their, what they allocate their staff to go do, was based off LGA, and we were both kind of looking at each other like, well, we don't get LGA, so what good does that do us? I don't know if that's changed, but when I saw that, I'm like, I guess what do we feel we're getting from it?
So I think they've taken a much more varied focus on their activities. So, for example, the last conference, it was about rural impact daycare, a shortage in rural areas, ambulance service in rural areas. I mean, there is applicable stuff, and it runs the entire gambit of members that are, Duluth and Rochester size, St. Cloud size, down to communities that are smaller than Becker, but they're all greater Minnesota. And so the focus is much more on rural impacts than, for example, the league would carry. The league's gonna carry LGA for sure. And I would agree with you, if that's all that they were doing, we don't get LGA, so what are we doing? But I've seen a little broader, focus on their part. Labor issues are another big thing that they've been hitting the last couple of years. So I think there's value in it, and if we don't want to be a member of that, I'm certainly fine with that. It's about, 4,000 or 5,000, I believe, based on our population.
Okay, I wasn't aware that we would, I just didn't remember and I think we had maybe talked about it before, but I didn't know we pulled the trigger on it, so. Okay.
When does that run, like January to December?
I believe it's January to.
We're already members this year.
It's been budgeted for this year. Whether we paid dues yet, I don't. It's a question for Mark. I don't know if we have yet. Might be a mid-year billing. It might be a July to June.
Okay.
I'll verify.
Yeah, July to June is what CUC is, and I think it has because of the legislative calendar,
Right.
so.
I guess I did have one more quick question. Having not been part of the last police chief interview process, I don't know if police committee is gonna lead that or personnel, or if it's a little bit of both. But I've had a couple conversations with the Big Lake mayor, and they definitely, during their interview process, utilize more than just council. And it's just something I would like people to at least consider or think about. I realize that the final result, final decision has to lay with council, but with our neighbors down there, Not having a lot of stability at the chief position in the past, they really looked at it differently this time. And they involved some other people on committees with council retaining the final say, so it's just something I wanna throw out there through the hiring process.
As far as like community members, or are you thinking, because we did have a
We
couple.
had, we had community members as part of
Oh,
it.
okay, I wasn't sure.
No, that's okay, but yeah, we had Grant was one of them,
Grant Rademacher.
and Scott.
Oh,
Scott Halbert.
And did we have, other staff then? Did we have department heads or anything?
No department heads, but the police department, the bargaining unit had a meet and greet with each candidates as well.
So
And then they wrote a
community
sum-
members sit with
And
council
they
then?
wrote a summary for us to review.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, they sat with council.
I've just seen success in the past, like on superintendent search or principals, where sometimes it's good to have two different committees ask questions because you get a different view on it, I guess, when you're considering your audience, so.
We kind of had three with this last approach here, so we had the formal interview here with council. And then, Chris took him around town and that was, probably you would call it an informal.
Part of the whole thing.
Yeah, well, but you know,
You
getting
gotta
to
create
talk to him,
conversation.
He took him around and showed him different areas of town, and then the third, they kind of rotated, but then one other piece was like, they mentioned the police, well, it was the bargaining, it was everybody, it was, they did theirs. I don't know that I would, recommend doing that piece again, but that last piece, but, for sure, open to other ideas.
All right.
So to answer your question, we can add it to both committee for discussion purposes there.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Anybody have anything else? All right, then we'll adjourn the meeting at 6:46. Thank you.
You think
It was so cold, my truck line went from its normal beat to this little tiny little personnel thing. My wife gave me a little attitude. Like Friday at 6, 7, stuff. Yeah.